right. Here we are. The final Techno Saturday of 2020. And I believe... What's up, guys? This is the last 343 TV episode of the year as well. We'll be wrapping up this season and taking a little holiday break and picking up again in January sometime. So, hey guys, it's a little crazy today. I was just doing a little technical setup earlier, and sometimes things go smoothly and sometimes they don't. So I'll be honest with you, it's a little haphazard today. It's a little bit freeform today. And actually, and sometimes that can just be more fun, like if it's sort of off the cuff and not too planned. So, all right. Got the chat going already. Hi, Mr. Kingston III. Enigmatic Onion has his subharmonic on. Nice. I wish I had one of those. I kind of slowed down on buying synths. I was starting to pick up again on it, and I was trying to get into do a little bit of live stuff with Christian Smith, and also with the electro project I do with Jason Shostak, aka BPMF. And then everything kind of slowed down, right? So I've been kind of not playing with the hardware as much. But yeah, subharmonicon, wow, that'd be great. Hi, Martin Crockett. Welcome. Yes, NYC, that's where I am. Good place to be. TWD Industries, welcome back. And Rudy Wolf, didn't you win a giveaway recently? Berlin, absolutely glad to have you here. Hi, Mar. And Max Wild. Max, I got your email. A little last minute to set you up, but we can try. If you have something to share, like I said, this is a little freeform today. I mean, okay, we're looking at the Arturia Vocoder V, the new interesting looking vocoder that's been released recently with the update to the V collection. So I've got that. I don't know if you can see it kind of blurry behind me. I've been playing around with that. And I'm also going to be playing around a little bit with Live's vocoder. And you might be wondering, like, okay, first of all, what's a vocoder? That's something, if you don't know, that's going to be cleared up today. But also, like, why, if I use Ableton Live, I've got this vocoder, how is it different? What can it do that's different than something like a third-party, fancy third-party plugin like Arturia's Vocoder V? So why would you choose one over the other, or why might you use both for different reasons? All right. And TWD Industries is asking, which hardware vocoders have I been able to play with? Well, honestly, not a lot of them. Not a lot of the fancy vintage ones that everybody lusts after. Like there's the classic Roland vocoders and the Moog and everything. But and I can tell you, one vocoder I would absolutely love to get my hands on is the Bode vocoder. That thing sounds amazing. If you search for that on YouTube, some guy made an amazing video to demonstrate his vocoder that he had for sale, and it's one of the best commercials you could possibly make for a vocoder. It's really great. I should dig up that link and share it. I've used various sort of cheaper vocoders. I like, there's a Boss. Roland has that. I don't know. Do they still do this brand called Boss? I guess they do. They have the pedals, right? And there was a SE70 had a vocoder in it that sounds pretty good, actually. There was a Japanese vocoder. I want to say Voice Spectra or Voice Spectral, something like that. And it's a very rare, hard to find rack mount vocoder that sounds incredible, super detailed. It was my favorite vocoder for years, and I missed my chance to buy one. They had one. There was a place in New York called Dr. Sound that had lots of vintage gear, and they had one for like $700, and that would be a steal now if you could find this vocoder for $700. I would buy it because it sounds incredible. And I was always disappointed by software vocoders for the most part until Live's vocoder. I have to say, the vocoder in Live is my favorite vocoder, and that's the one I fall back on. . Enigmatic Onion asks, isn't the vocoder just a little one-dimensional? I never got it, never did it for me. All right, it depends on how you use it. And I think that's part of what we should talk about today because, you know, using a vocoder to sound like a robot, yes, that can get a little one-dimensional and limited, you know, and like if you love electro and Kraftwerk and vintage sci-fi and Battlestar Galactica and Cylon voices, you know, vocoder. You love that, right? Or if you like, you know, classic Giorgio Moroder synthesizer disco, you know, late 70s, he was using Moog Modular and the Moog vocoder to do, I think he used the Moog anyway. And that, if you want that sound, that's how you get it. And it's perfect for that genre. But vocoders are more than that. I mean, a vocoder is a fancy filter bank with modulation, right? You're modulating individual filters. So if you're interested in doing cool filter tricks, vocoders can do that. And I think we can look at what, you know, a little bit, depends on time, what the Vocoder V can do in that respect and what the Live Vocoder can do in that respect. And anyway, here we are. It's the end of the year. This is like our vocoder holiday hangout. It's a vocoder overload or a vocoder load. That's bad. Bad. All right. Let's make some noise. I'm going to go and start looking at the plugin now and stop talking so much. And all right. So this is an instance of the Arturia Vocoder. Now, I've already got this set up. I've got another mic right here. I've already got this set up to do like a typical vintage robot voice, right? Hello. Oh.
Yes. Right, so this is like your, I mean, it's got some modulation going on, as you can hear. It's sweeping up and down.
Does everyone hear that okay, by the way? Give me an okay in the chat that's coming through. It was tricky to get, this is one of the things that's sort of off the cuff today is 2 mics, vocoder, live broadcast, craziness, right? So let me know how it sounds.
Yes. Okay, so I'm a robot. By your command.
That was the old like Cylon voice in the 70s. They would say, by your command. And so if you're not already familiar with
how a vocoder works,
there's sort of 2 parts of it. There's a modulating signal, right? And traditionally that's a microphone. You know, originally this technology was designed for sending secret messages over phone lines during wartime. This is literally like war technology. Originally, they wanted to figure out how to encode and decode messages. So, you know, look that up, like Bell Labs and vocoder. If you Google that, you'll find some history. But yeah, so the microphone is sending an input into the vocoder, and that is a modulating signal. It's listening to the amplitude, right? You're getting the signal, how loud and soft it is, and it's creating a shape. And that signal's getting split up between a bunch of different filters. So that's the second part. Well, okay, there's the filters, and the filters are tracking, you know, the amplitude of the input, right? So the input is modulating how much we hear of each of those filters. And if I zoom in here, if you look, that's the filter bank. There's 16 bandpass filters. So we're hearing the input, you know, split up into all these different filters, right? And there's an envelope tracker that's following how loud and soft I am, right? For each of those filters. But my voice is not going through the filters. What's going through the filters in the case of the Arturia is an analog synthesizer. So that's the bottom part of here. We've got 2 oscillators. It's a simple 2 oscillator subtractive synth. It's polyphonic. I can play chords or I can just play one at a time. It's got square waves, sawtooth waves. This has this kind of vintage analog sound to it, right? So my voice is going through the mic. The mic's going into the input of the vocoder, and it's the modulating signal. And then when I play the synth, we're going to hear the synth filtered through this filter bank, and the filter bank is being modulated by my voice.
So the waveform takes on the character of the modulating signal. So when I say oh,
we hear more of those frequencies, and when I say ah, we hear more of those frequencies. And at the same time, I don't know,
you can kind of hear there's some noise.
Right? So there's also a noise generator that's tracking the input, and it's got a filter on it, and it's listening to S's and T's and high frequencies. So it's able to kind of recreate your voice by combining all those filter banks together that are individually tracking, and the output is, we're hearing that synthesizer filtered into the shape and sort of tone of whatever is coming in to the input. It doesn't have to be a microphone, though.
So right now we've got it set up where the MIDI is playing the synth and my voice is modulating the filter.
But we also can go to the sample player. If I click on sample player, instead of an external input to be the modulator, you have, oh, I think my MIDI's not going. Again, with the crazy complexity today. So, right. Oops.
This is the default. This is the default. This is the default preset.
So, yeah, now we have, I just realized I made kind of a funny mistake. Hence, again, today is a little crazy. So that whole time I apologies to Arturia, that we were not listening to the Vocoder V. We were listening to the live vocoder. So I didn't do that on purpose, although I could have played it off as doing it on purpose, because the live vocoder actually can sound really, really good. Just to say, it's one of my favorites. So now we're actually listening to Arturia's vocoder, right? Now, we have the voice input and what I just demonstrated. Now we have the sample player. So instead of an external modulator coming in from a microphone, we've got an internal sample playback to be the modulator.
This is the default preset.
And you can drag and drop any sample you want to in there. And let's just quickly go through some presets.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
And now we'll get sort of an idea of what their plugin can do, what different kinds of sounds you can do. That sounds like it's saying 16-channel vocoder, right? It's not very intelligible, though. Right, so, whoa. There's a nice example of a sound that's using something else besides a voice as the modulator. So, I think, we had this comment earlier. The vocoder is just a little one-dimensional. Yeah, Enigmatic Onion was saying, it is a little one note, but depending on what you modulate with and depending on what you're modulating, you can change what that note is. So yeah, voice and sawtooth wave robot voices is very one-dimensional. It's a specific thing that you may like or not like for your productions. But once you start branching out, if you use drum sounds or other types of sounds as the modulator and other types of waveforms as the carrier, we can call it the carrier, the sound that's being filtered by the filter bank, you don't have to use sawtooth waves and voices. It can be any sound almost. Now, in Arturia's vocoder, you can use any sample, any sound as the modulator, or any external input from any other sound in your DAW as the modulator. You're still limited to triangle wave, sawtooth wave, square wave, and noise in your oscillators, so it's always going to be like a subtractive synth kind of tone. Once you get into some of the more complex presets here, you'll see, but if we go and look over at the modulation view, there's a lot of crazy modulation we can do of the synth and also of the vocoder parameters to make it do different things. So that definitely takes it into other dimensions, and it's not just one note anymore. And thanks, TWD Industries. I'm going to stop talking so much. Very funny. Yes, I knew I was going to get a comment about that. I just can't help myself. How could you not talk when you have a vocoder? Also, right? I've seen that. There's been a couple of YouTube videos on Arturia saying, okay, going through all the presets, no talking, and then like everything in the thing is talking because it's all vocoding, right? Where were we? Oh yeah, the giveaway today. I kind of jumped right into the content without talking about 343 Labs, but yeah, we have the $300 voucher. We got the $343 for you guys. If you want to sign up for a class or a private lesson or anything with us, you could have some credit for that. So if you're interested in what we're doing here at 343, of course, we're a school. We have in-person classes in New York and in Berlin. We've got our online courses. I have my synth and sound design course for producers. So if you're interested in that, you know, you were thinking about signing up, maybe this is a good enticement for you. Join in our giveaway, and we'll be announcing the winner at the end. And I'll probably use the vocoder to do it, right? What's up, Andrew Duke? He's here. I was wondering when you were going to show up. You weren't here right at the beginning, but I'm glad to see you. I wasn't sure if you were going to make it. And Hank, thanks. Glad you like the sound of it. Back to this. All right, so we're hearing this drum loop running through. So there's another interesting feature. One of the things that this can do in terms of playing back samples that's very useful is you can load in multiple samples and switch between them in different ways. So this one is set up where you play in a lower octave, C1, C sharp 1, D1, and D sharp 1. These are going to switch between those 4 samples. And that way in your MIDI, you could, you know, whenever you, and this is the same way a lot of like multi-sample instruments work, say like in Contact or so on, like these orchestral samples where you use a MIDI note to trigger different articulations, different variations on the sound. This way you can use your sequencer to have a MIDI note change what we're hearing at any particular note while higher notes are playing the melody. But there's also this cycle mode where every time you play a note, it'll just go through to the next sample. So water, air, earth, fire, water. So that's a pretty cool feature to have. It's a nice way to create some constant variation in your sounds. I like this patch, for example, this airy drums. All right now it's on keyboard mode where you would use a note to switch between it, but on cycle, every time I hit a note, right? I'm just playing 16th notes or whatever, and it's going to cycle through those drums, and you'll hear this different tonal variation. So every time the different drum plays, we're getting different frequencies, kind of activating the filter bank, and we're hearing the vocoder make different tones. So, you know, again, to kind of point out how vocoders aren't just for robot voices, and you can go beyond them. And if you think about this as a fancy filter plus effects and modulation, you know, there's a lot that we can do. What else have we got in here? That's crazy. You know, that's like some insane vocal sample modulation, right? I mean, let's hear what's underneath that. If we go over here, we've got the dry vocoder mix. If I go all the way to dry, I'm only going to hear my modulating signal. From yelling to silence. Right? That's like a fairly, you know, okay, whatever vocal sample. It's sort of, you know, we don't even really know what she's saying. I didn't listen very carefully. But we're not, in this case, we're not worried about the actual words. That's just a shape and a tone that can be applied to the synthesizer. Right, so here we're hearing noise and a pulse wave. If we go in here to the modes here, there's some modulation going on. This is another cool thing that Arturia's that the Vocoder V has that makes it interesting for me, is it's got this built-in envelope follower. So, and the envelope follower is how a vocoder works to begin with, right? I mentioned that earlier, that each filter band is being controlled by an envelope follower that's following the input signal. So I can use that same input signal and apply it as a modulator to anything, right? So here, that envelope follower it's following the amplitude of the sample, and it's applying it to the FM amount, right? So there's some modulation going on that's making that crazy warbly sound come out of the synth, and it's increasing or decreasing according to the shape of the sample. Right, so that's really powerful, what we're seeing here. Martin Crockett says, gotta respect the wallpaper in the Arturia graphic. That's right. There's like the details here. There's like the cable and the like French style vintage wallpaper pattern. And I mean, come on. I'll be honest. I'm not a huge fan of software interfaces that emulate hardware. Most of the time. In this case, though, it's fine. It's the panel is laid out logically and it makes sense. You know, you have your advanced mode and you have your more straight ahead mode. Even though it's emulating the look of the hardware, I can still easily get to every control. There's nothing weird. So they did a good job of balancing like virtual hardware and a good screen layout for software. And yeah, Martin also says Satan mode engaged. You can definitely get into some ill, like crazy, distorted voices with these things. All right, I don't know. Another sample-based one. All I want is you. I gotta say, a lot of the vocal sample in here for these presets are kind of cheesy. You're definitely, what I would suggest, you know, working with this, if you're going through the presets and you hear a sound that you like, you know, go into the advanced mode and then just go replace that sample with one of your own. Actually, let's try that. If you want to start fresh, and I usually would do it this way, I would go to new preset. Now this is a kind of default. This is the default preset. You know, we've got a simple sawtooth wave, one single sawtooth wave going through the filter. All the bands are up, and let's see if we can find some kind of drum loop to play with. Anything really. All right. Not some one shots, but some kind of, let's find something with a. Let's do this. All right, I'm going to try that one. Let's see if it likes it. There we go. No, it didn't like it. Let's try this one. It looks like, I've come across this before with some plugins. They only want WAV files. They don't want AIF files. And all of my samples are WAV files, or most of the loops are anyway. All right, let's sort this out. All right, this is just the first thing that came up. There we go. Sorry, guys. I want it on. There we go. So that was pretty easy, all right? Just to drop in any kind of beat you want. Now, let's see. What I'm going to do now, just to switch gears a little bit for myself, is I'm going to switch back over to some of the stuff I'm working on already here and talk a little bit about Live's vocoder. So, actually, no. Let's stick with Arturia. So I have something, I started a kind of a techno groove to get into just sort of some ideas for techno using vocoding. And this is actually a pretty classic move. It's nothing super new, but it's one of my favorite kind of tricks to do with a vocoder in terms of techno. So I've got an instance of Vocoder V set up here. I started with the default and, you know, kind of just did a little tweaking. I've combined the oscillators together, but nothing too fancy going on. And I have got, I'm using the external input. I'm not using the internal sample player. So I've got the voice input set up. All right. And I have a MIDI track set up with a drum kit. And this, I threw in this Africa drum. Just these got these kind of tonal, kind of conga-ish sounds, and they actually really work well for this as a modulator. And then in order to get that routed into Arturia's vocoder, you set your audio to, instead of the master, you're going to choose the track that your vocoder is on. And you can see there right underneath it says sidechain, right? So there's a sidechain input that goes to the modulator in Vocoder V. And this is, let's hear what's playing. This is what the drums are doing, along with some beats, I guess. And you guys have seen me do this before, where I like kind of made a random conga groove just by putting in some notes wherever. I did the same thing here. Right, and that's cool for a percussion loop, but here we're going to use this as the modulator for the vocoder. All right, so let's make our audio 2 go back to the correct channel. Right, we don't hear it anymore, although now we're getting, in the vocoder, we're hearing some of the noise coming through. So let's go take a look what's going on in there. So I mentioned earlier, like there's the synth, and then there's a noise generator that's also responding to the input. So that's over here under high frequency and hiss versus buzz, right? We have some control over what high frequencies are coming through from the noise. There's an overall level for it. All right, so that's always there, even when I'm not playing a note. So in order to hear some, the synth come through, I have to send MIDI to it. So on the vocoder track, I'm just playing a big sustained chord. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes going on here. So let's hear what that sounds like. Now, as soon as I play the MIDI to the vocoder, we're going to hear the synth going through the filter, and then we're going to hear the percussion modulate the filter, and then this big sawtoothy square wave chord that I'm playing is going to sound. You're going to hear the result of that being the filter being modulated by the drums. All right, there's some effects going on. Let's take those out for a second. And we can see what's going on inside of the Arturia. All right, so here's our filter bank. You can control the overall tone of the sound by adjusting the level of each filter. It's kind of like EQing. Another thing that's going on is on the input, there's a compressor, so I'm actually controlling the dynamics of the input signal that's modulating. And if I want, I can also change the EQ of the input. I can make everything sound brighter. If there's more brightness at the input, we're going to hear more brightness, more exaggerated effect of the highs controlling the filter. So it's really useful in a vocoder to have, you're kind of able to clean up and mix your input, and so the better sounding your input is, or the more like how you want it is, the easier it is to get the results you want. Especially with vocals, it's really important. We'll look at this again in a little bit. Processing the mic going into the vocoder for intelligibility, being able to accurately track the syllables and to hear a balance of the tone and the noise. It's really important to pre-process going in. All right. So we've got envelope times here. You know, every time there's a gate opening and closing, right? And I can soften it up by increasing the attack time. Can have a shorter release or a longer release. It's going to ring out longer. I can shift the band. So, you know, all of these are all fixed frequencies, but with this shift, I can transpose all the bands higher or lower at the same time. So that's basically formant shifting. And then we have the width. So each of these bandpass filters can be wider or narrower. If you make it narrower, it's going to sound more ringy. If you want, you can hold it. So you can have it just stop at one particular filter setting and it won't modulate anymore. That's something you could automate. All right. And I showed you this earlier. You have your noise component over here. You can sort of be really precise about how much of the high frequencies, you know, like if there were hi-hats in this or something, or if it was a voice, your S's and your T's, this is where you're going to have control over that. And then you can also mix together the input signal and the vocoded signal. TWD Industries asks if you can slap an LFO on the band shift. Absolutely you can. Let's do that. Go to the mods, go to LFO, go to the destination, assign it to vocoder shift. Oh, I like that. I just turned the re-trigger off, so it's not going to start over every time I play a note. Let's slow it down. Pretty cool. We are not doing Daft Punk today, Scott Vincent. Sorry, but we could. We can use this to sound like Daft Punk. That's not my thing. But you know they use vocoders. We could also use, I'm going to turn the LFO off for a second. I could use the envelope follower to modulate the shift. It's very fast, so it's really quick. It's doing a little sweep down. It's just changing the shape a little bit, making it choppier. I like that. All right, so I like this pattern. I'm going to hear what this sounds like with the kick and the hi-hat. I'm definitely, you know, I'm still in my, like, I'm an old guy from the 90s. I make 90s sounding techno phase right now. So it's just got the 909 kick and a sample of a, yeah, it's a 909 hat and kick processed a little bit. Let's put some echo on that. Oops. And then you have fun modulating, playing with the knobs, being expressive with the sound. You know, that's obviously stuff I could control with an automation or with MIDI controller, and, you know, get this kind of hypnotic, dubby, techno, future flying through space kind of vibe that I love about this style of music. Let's see where we're at. We're at the halfway points. Now, I have a friend hanging out. Let's see if he's waiting in the wings. I'm not sure if he's back yet. Who is... All right, I hear him. I don't know if you guys can hear him. Let me see if I can get him in the mix here. So, there he is. This is my friend Elliot Taub, aka Ulysses. Also another musical partner of mine. We do a project called the Neurotic, or just Neurotic Drum Band. Because, you know, we're a couple of neurotic dudes and we like drums, I guess. I don't know. So Yeah, we've got Elliot in the house. I just wanted to hang out. You know, this is the last show of the season, and I wanted to have a friend to hang out and do some vocoder stuff. And TW Industries is asking, do you know anything about techno? I'm going to address that to you. Elliot, do you know anything about techno? Yeah, that's cool. You've made some techno. We've made some techno. Although sometimes a lot of the music we make is a little more eclectic and like a lot of kind of weird, funky styles mixed together. But yeah, we can do techno too. Anyway, I guess I had, 2 reasons for having Elliot on today. Is one, just to have someone to hang out with and have fun, since this is sort of a free form end of the year kind of a mess, I guess. But also, I figured Elliot and I could like take a look at how he set up his vocoder and what we can do to like get the vocoder sounding a little more clean and clear and tight. And you can hear what he's saying. Say something, Elliot. All right, I understand that, but oh yeah, Sleepy and Boo are here. What's up? Yeah, Begonia and Mike are also friends of both of ours here in New York. So glad that you are joining the chat today.
Now I can see your chat.
You're right. There he is. There he is in my Ableton Live screen. So, what we're going to do is I wanted to talk a little bit about how to set up your microphone and process it to have it sound better going into the vocoder. So what the vocoder does, it does a better job at sounding clean and clear when you're doing vocals. So let's see. I've got this kind of fancy rack I set up here. It's a little overcomplicated, but basically I was trying to build something similar, like starting to do this. Build something with live devices that does what the Arturia Vocoder does, where you can combine, like it's a single MIDI instrument where you can have an audio input combined with sample playback and you can switch between them. Just sort of as an exercise. But if you take a look at my, this is like the mic input chain here. So before it even goes in to the vocoder, I'm trying to clean up my signal. So I've got very low frequencies cut out so you can avoid any sort of rumbling or low frequency room noise in the background. And then this I find really important is to use a gate after that. So let me switch back over to my vocoder here.
And okay, so you can hear right now I'm playing the vocoder and I'm got the low frequencies cut out. I've got some of the boominess reduced. This would be adjusted according to your voice, right? And then I'm using a gate to reject noise when I'm not speaking. And it's got a pretty fast release, a very fast attack. And it's cleaning up the signal a lot. Then I'm compressing it fairly, not too heavily, but just to get a more even signal going into the vocoder. And you don't absolutely need a limiter, but it's there in case I get too loud. I'm like, hey, and right now the compressor's doing its job pretty well. So all of that processing is going on before it hits the input for the modulator and the vocoder.
Now, going back to look at the vocoder and the Arturia, that's why they have this in here. So you can do the same kind of EQ job here with the parametric EQ. There's a compressor and there's also a gate, so you can adjust the threshold of the input to reject noise in the background. So the Arturia gives you that all built in.
Sweet.
Yeah, sweet. And all right, going back to here. So that's that, right? That's my vocal channel. And it's the same kind of EQ gate and compressor setup you might have for doing any kind of vocal recording. So you're processing your voice to make it sound as clean and clear as you can and controlling the dynamics before you hit the vocoder. And then on the flip side of that, the carrier that you use, the more sort of bright and full frequency the sound is, the more you have to work with the vocoder. So, that's one of the reasons why you hear this kind of classic, bright, buzzy, sawtooth vocoder sound, is because it works so well. Now, what I've got set up in my rack here is, for my carrier, I've chosen Live's wavetable synth. And using a synth like this is really great because you can have almost any kind of waveform that you want. And I could replace this with a sample. I could replace this with any instrument that I want. But just keep in mind that brighter, full frequency, simple waveforms like a sawtooth or a square are going to be easier to work with in the beginning, because you're really kind of when you're doing this kind of typical vocoder voice, it's going to work better if you have a full frequency spectrum going in. If you're starting with a sine wave, you're going to have one frequency and you're not going to hear all the detail of the modulator. You need a complex or bright full waveform to hear all of the details of the modulating signal. So, and I'm using, some of these vintage waveforms in Live's wavetable as my carrier. And I've got...
All right, there we go. So I've got the MIDI going in. Now you sound like me. Now I sound like you. That's beautiful. Yeah, okay. And then... I'm taking a look. This is a complicated rack. It's almost impossible to do this and stream at the same time. So I also have...
Let me just talk to normally. I also have a compressor on the output of the vocoder. That's another really important thing to control the dynamics of this. And then a limiter as well, just in case it gets real peaky sometimes. So...
All right. So...
Live's vocoder is more detailed than Arturia's. Arturia's, it's based on a model of hardware, and it's got 16 bands, and it has that vintage sound. It sounds really good. It's really smooth. And it's actually, as vintage vocoders go, as models of vintage vocoders go, it sounds really nice and clean and clear. Live's vocoder you can change the number of bands. You can go from 4 filters up to 40 filters. The more filters you have, the more detailed and clear the sound can be. So let's just play with that a little bit.
Okay, so that's 40.
You just hear buzzing, right?
12, and that gets a little more detailed, and then 16, 28, 36, 40. Once you get to 40, it sounds really clean and clear. So this is one of the reasons I like Live's vocoders. It's so flexible and can be so detailed. I also can adjust the range of frequencies that it concentrates on and filter out higher bands, really narrow in on a frequency range if I want to. And then there's our bandwidth control, similar to what we heard in the Arturia. And we can also have a vintage mode, which it sounds more resonant and you hear more high frequencies and less low frequencies. So there's a lot of flexibility. And also there's an internal gate. We have a full after.
So you can sound like munchkinized or darker or bigger if you want some sort of evil monster voices, things like that. So anyway, I guess I'm giving you guys and I'm giving Elliot here a little bit of a lesson on sort of the particulars of getting a better quality vocoder result when you're using a microphone. It applies to using other modulators as well. You just got to keep in mind, like, the tone and the dynamics of the modulator is really important in the overall sound. Martin Crockett.
My tone. You sound great. You got a problem with the way I express myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay. So, we had a question, vocoder on hi-hats. So if you use hi-hats through a vocoder, it's going to be really narrow, bands that we're going to hear. We're only going to hear the high frequencies of the filter triggered. And, you know, for example, all right, let's set this up. Let's see if we can't figure out what happens when we use hi-hats as a modulator. So drums. All right, I'm going to use this hi-hat actually because it has some low frequencies in it as well. It's got like some kind of, it's sort of a synthesized hi-hat, right? And there's noise and high frequencies, but there's also some like, there's a tone to it as well. So if I wanted to use this as a modulator with the Live's vocoder, I would just go to the audio effects and drag a vocoder after it. So you're all, you know, in Live, the vocoder is an audio effect. It's not a MIDI instrument. So you're going to put it on the track that you're modulating it with. So, and that's another thing we can talk about is actually what the carrier is. So far, we've been talking about external carriers, right? With Live, and in Arturia's, it's got an internal synthesizer. So they're combined into the same instrument. In Live's vocoder, you can modulate any sound, right? So you can choose an external source like a synth or another plugin, or you can use internal noise. If you set it to modulator, it's actually going to modulate itself. Like, so this is going to run through the filter bank, and the filter is going to respond to the input signal. Oop. I have nothing in there yet. Let's put in a hi-hat pattern. All right, for better or for worse, this is our hi-hat pattern. All right, so that's the sound. It's pretty big, noisy synth hi-hat, right? Now it's running through a filter bank, and the filter bank is being modulated by the hi-hat. So we're basically using it as an audio effect now. If I switch that to noise, now we're going to hear a bunch of noise being modulated by that hi-hat. That sounds really kind of old school, doesn't it? I'm really old school today. Let's put in the hi-hats. All right, so yeah, we're using the vocoder to make kind of like a crazy, intense, filtered noise effect. If I choose an external, right, I could go and route the output of one of these other things. Those are actually the Techno chords, right? All right, we're getting right now we're getting it straight out of the congas. I want to get it, this is complicated, look at that, oh my God. I want to get it straight out of... So many parameters, oh my gosh. All right, so let me first of all make sure these are working. Okay. I had the wrong track. All right. Why isn't it working? All right, I think our live input output on the fly kind of stuff is not working well here, but what else is solo? Ah, that's why. Okay. Right, so now I'm using that hi-hat. Right, those dub chords that I made with the other vocoder are now going into this vocoder, and I'm using the hi-hat to modulate them. All right, so you can see how it can get complicated quickly with all this routing. I think that's something that people get kind of hung up on with vocoders is what's going into what. I think. What would you say, Elliot?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So we had that issue this morning.
That is true. Yeah, we were like, "What's going on with your setup, Elliot?" We were trying to get him fixed up. And
my fault.
oh yeah, it's all your fault. So, hey, I'm trying to get back to
this. So we have a winner in our giveaway. Congratulations, Jared. Awesome. I hope that's how it's pronounced. Winner of 300. 343 bucks.
So yeah, you've got a credit. Congratulations. Hopefully that is going to serve you well joining one of our classes here at 343. So, wow, I feel like today's been a little wacky. I will admit, this is a tough thing to stream live, using vocoders, routing one thing into another thing, and but yeah, it's definitely a little crazy. And then we got the whole like keeping track of the chat, and it was funny. I joined Abe's broadcast yesterday, and it was also sort of like a little freeform and a little crazy. So yes, congratulations again to our winner. Thank you, Andrew Duke, for saying it sounds great. And I mentioned I didn't get to too much of like making techno today. At least I had this example of doing these kind of dubby techno chords with the vocoder. And let's see, I have another layer to this. I want to see if this is even still working. All right, so there we go. So I did kind of a similar thing with my rack using the live vocoder and the wavetable to recreate sort of the capabilities of Arturia Vocoder V. So I've got my MIDI is playing back this conga loop. It's another set of congas, right? And that's getting routed into the vocoder. Right. So I'm able to do the same kind of setup where we're, with Arturia's vocoder, I can switch between external input or internal sample playback. And so this is sort of the same thing. So I've got this rack, and in the rack there is a chain with a sampler on it, and then another chain where I'm using the external audio effect to bring in the mic input. And that's my EQ and compressed gate and compressor that I'm using to process the mic going into the vocoder. And then after that instrument rack is the vocoder. So I can switch between the sample playback or the live input. And then, normally whenever I've seen people demonstrate how to do your vocoder routing and live, you've got like a MIDI track and you've got an audio track, and the vocoder's on the audio track, and the MIDI track has the synth or the plugin that you want to use as your carrier. And then that's routed through the external input in the vocoder on another track. Having it this way, it's one MIDI track and it has the carrier synth, whatever it is, and the vocoder and the mic input all on one track. It's a little complicated to set up, but I don't know, once I'm done optimizing this and getting all the controls and doing the macros, I want to make this easy for anybody to use. So this is my holiday vocoder gift for everybody who might be interested. I'm going to make this available as soon as it's done, to have like your own sort of Ableton Live native virtual version of the Arturia vocoder, kind of like. And I'm not saying that this is, just don't get me wrong, I really like Arturia's stuff, and their vocoder sounds really good, and it's easy to use, and it's great that you have all these modulation possibilities right there at your fingertips. But I also really love Live's vocoder. I like the detail from having the 40 bands, and it has a different character. It's a little brighter and crispier somehow. So, ideally you're going to be using both of these. But if you're not laying out for an Arturia plugin for yourself for Christmas, and you just want to and you have Live and you want to get started doing some cool tricks with the internal vocoder with Live, I'll make this the rack. Once it's done, I'm going to make this available for everybody to download. So that's my holiday end of the season gift for all of you guys. And so this was just a little preview of that, as along with our first look for me at the Arturia Vocoder. So, yeah, that's right. Rudy Wolf says the most fun little music lesson ever. Regards from a retro futurist. I thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you found this fun. I mean, we're not quite done yet. We still got a few minutes. Elliot, have you managed to kind of tweak your settings a little bit while we've been talking?
No, not quite.
Yeah, see, that's what you were supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be making your vocoders sound better while we were doing that. I mean, should we go over it again for the sake of everybody else watching? In terms of like, all right, so you're looking at your input on your mic right now. What you're processing going in to the vocoder, and the first one in the chain is the EQ. Mainly, the EQ is here to cut out the low frequencies we don't want. Now, I know your mic doesn't have a lot of lows. It's I'm using right. So yeah, you want a high pass, and you can see like right around where your voice is. You want to cut sort of a little bit below that. And then you don't have to reduce the boominess, but if you're real close to your mic, if there's some proximity, you might want to, this just depends on your mic, what that sounds like. And if your mic isn't very shiny on top, you could actually brighten it up a little bit to get your S's and T's a little more clear. Yeah, that stuff. And then after that, you want to set your gate up. So I love this about Live's gate is so easy to use, but you can see exactly where the signal is and just set that threshold right above any like noise in the background. And you want your attack pretty quick. You don't want to lose out any consonants. So if I do this, if it's too slow, you're going to have like a fade on every syllable. You want it to be pretty sharp. And then and the release, same kind of thing, not as short as the attack, but like, sounding so if you do it too short, it can chop off too soon. So you want to give yourself a little bit of a tail right there. And then compressor, right, this is the mic going into it. It's got a totally different level now. But you can see, again, so something so nice about the visual on the live compressor is you can set the threshold based on what you see there. So I've got the threshold sort of at an average between my peaks and the lower level, right? And, again, you can adjust your attack release by ear or whatever you think sounds right for you. And optional limiter at the end. But just that right there should make, when you're doing voice into a vocoder, should make it sound much clearer. And the vocoder is going to do a little bit more accurate tracking, I should say. As long as you don't overdo it. You don't want it to squash it so much that there's no dynamics. You just want to control the dynamics and limit the range so you don't have extraneous noise. So how's it sounding?
Good. What do you think?
Well, it's hard for me to tell exactly because your audio over the streaming to me over our call is a little broken up. So we're going to have, right. But it's, you'll have to be the judge. I'll trust you.
Okay. Sounds very futuristic.
And yeah.
Server future.
Okay.
Change this. If I make this a little better. Oh yeah.
It's all falling apart at the end. I think it's 2:00. We're totally out of time. I want to say thanks to Elliot for hanging out with me, and I want to say thanks to all of you who have been watching throughout the year and following along all these episodes, and also thank you for putting up with this little bit of a vocoder mess that we've been doing today. But I have to say it's been fun, and
life is a vocoder mess.
that's right. And so this is the last show of the year. We don't have anything on for next week. It's holiday times for many of us, so enjoy your time off if you get it. And of course, Happy New Year. We will see you in January. So keep an eye out. As ever, if you haven't already subscribed, please do give us a like or a dislike, whatever you feel like. Just engage with us. Check out our website. check out our Discord server. We've got all sorts of stuff going on, and we'll be announcing events and other things going on there. And we will be back soon with a new season of 343 TV, and also a final thanks to our winner. Congratulations on that $300 certificate. Yeah, saying yay through a vocoder doesn't quite do it. Oh, actually, it would if we had we didn't talk about pitch tracking. If we had the pitch tracking on, then that would be a whole nother story. But anyway, we'll save that for another future episode. And Dave Turoff was here.
He sure was.
Yeah, message retracted. Thanks so much for retracting your message. All right, I'm gonna stop while I'm not behind yet. I feel like we were ahead and now we're like slipping. So,
Totally.
yeah, you got the pitch tracking on. All right.
I am tracking my pitch.
No kidding. So, all right, the audio's a little funky. We got to work on that. That's next for my stream upgrades, is improving remote audio connections from my guests. So, all right, that's enough talking.
Wi-Fi.
Get off of Wi-Fi. It's your fault.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, sure.
All right. You sound like the Beastie Boys Intergalactic now. Totally.
I am very intergalactic. I am traveling across space and time right now.
And on that note, I think we're going to say goodbye. So enjoy the rest of your year and see you next time. Adios.